Okay, in this video, we're going to continue our conversation, and this time we're going to be talking about Microsoft DNS, and we're going to be talking about the DNS zones, the types of zones, and that's going to be a forward lookup zone and a reverse lookup zone, what those are, and we're going to talk through them and talk about the descriptions of them, the properties, so on and so forth within there. We're also going to talk about the start of authority. Who is the authority for updating this record? And this is kind of part of security for DNS, and it also gives kind of a footprint of what actually happened. And we're also going to talk about zone transfer and security and the records, who they get transferred to. So whenever a computer is joined to the domain or a server is added, where do those records go and who has authorization to see them? We're also going to talk about the record types. This is going to be whether it's a record, and this is going to be what we call a glue record, and this maps the name to an IP address. And we're going to be talking about MX records, mail exchange records, or we're talking about TXT records, which are more or less going to be used for DNS out on the internet. We're talking about security, you are who you say you are, types of things. And then we're going to talk about a time to live. How long is that record going to be alive before it has to be renewed? All right, so with that all being said, let's jump into the Microsoft DNS and take a look and talk through it. Okay, here we are back in the server manager again. We're going to go up here to tools and we're going to come down here to DNS. And now that this is up here, you can see here, here's our forward lookup zone. We have a forward lookup zone, a reverse lookup zone, a trust point, and a conditional forwarder. And we're going to touch base on all of these along with the cached lookup. And the reason why, if you're looking in your environment or if you're following along on your side, you're going to want to come up here to view and select the advanced here. And if you don't have that selected, you're not going to be able to see the cached lookups above there. So we're going to go ahead and it also gives you access to see other items within the properties of the objects. So we're going to go ahead and click on advanced here. And you can see here, here's our cached lookup here again. We're going to go ahead and expand forward lookup zone. We're going to go ahead and right click on this forward lookup zone. And if we select new, this is going to be where we're going to type a new zone. And there are three types of zones. There's going to be a Active Directory integrated zone, which is going to be the primary zone. And then you have a standard zone, then you have a stub zone. A standard zone is going to be one that's going to be manually kept up with. So whenever you add something on one side, you're going to have to go and add it to another server. This is going to be the zone itself. Apologize for that. I had to take a big gulp of coffee. All right, so the different types of zones is going to be a primary zone, which is going to be Active Directory integrated zone. And then you have your standard zone. So you can see here when I select standard zone, this Active Directory integrated was unhighlighted and the check mark went away. Select the stub zone, and again, stub zone, we can replicate that around. This is going to be just for pointer records pointing to the named server. So whenever a server in the branch office needs to contact someone or contact an object over in the primary office or wherever that may be, it has it doesn't have any records of this sort, like a DNS down here. It doesn't have this over there in that site. It's going to just have a zone like this with a name server in it. That's all. It's not going to have any other records that need to be kept up with or anything. Okay, and that's usually going to be in a branch office where there's going to be minimal employees there, minimal objects in that environment, only because you want to cut down on the amount of traffic that you're having to replicate back and forth. And it's just lookup traffic. All right, so in this case here, we can say primary zone. Select next here. And you can see here it's going to replicate to all domain controllers inside of the testlab1.local domain. Or if we wanted to do it within the forest, and remember the forest is going to be between us and another site. So another site meaning that it's a partner. So let's say we have a trust relationship like we talked about in this series. That's going to be this option here. Okay. And so if we come down here to all domain controllers and Windows 2000 compatible, this is going to be if you're going to have Server 2008, 2003, DNS servers within the environment. And that's what this top item here is for. You can hit cancel here. I'm going to, well, I don't want to hit cancel, but you can see here, I'm pointing to it. Here's the MSDCS. That's going to be for your lower level servers is what that's for. All right. And you only get that option in 2012 to actually see that. If you're already in 2008, you won't get this option here. The one above here, you'll still get the compatibility. Then it's going to be talking about 2003 and 2000 Windows 2000 DNS servers is what that'll be talking about in NT servers. Okay, go ahead and select next here. Here's going to be the name of the zone that we're going to create. And again, if it's going to be AD integrated, we can go ahead and just type any name here. And let's say we have a new name, and it's going to be CVS. And it's going to be cvs.local because it's going to be an internal one. And we're going to select next here. And again, here it says that the updates are going to be secure, and this is the recommended way. You usually don't want to select this option here unless you 100% know that that your DNS records are going to be going to the exact place where you're wanting them to go. But we're going to control that by the top one and selecting the only replicate to the name servers that we select. Okay. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and hit finish. It's just a summary here. So when we select finish here, you can see here in the middle pane, you see here it's an Active Directory integrated zone. And so if we go over to our other server, we're going to see that this gets replicated. But before this can be replicated, we're going to go here to the zone. We're going to right click on the zone, and you can see here there's only one name server in here. All right, and so the name server that's in here currently is the name of this server. So in order for it to be replicated to another server within our AD environment, again, it doesn't add these into here, but it does cut down on your administrative work. So when you're going to go over here, you're going to right click on the zone and go to properties, and then we're going to go to name server tab, and we're going to click on add. All right, and so we're going to get an error message in here once we type the information in here, and I'll explain why after we type that. All right, so we're going to type the fully qualified domain name, which is saying here, and this is going to be adding on the DNS, the domain name to this. So it's going to be the FQDN. Okay, so you can see here that it's actually trying to like look it up, but it's not going to. So we're going to go ahead and hit resolve here, and it's not going to be able to find it. We'll give it a moment here to time out, and I'll explain why it can't find it. And that's going to be because it doesn't have a reverse lookup record. So you can see here, it did find the address. So it did try to query out, and it probably used this internal DNS from when the internal DNS cache of itself, when the record was created. But you can see here, it's got a red X on it. And you can see here, if I'm going to highlight it, it's not authenticative. And so the reason why is because there's no reverse lookup zone. So it doesn't know that this record is glued to this name. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on OK. And now we can see that the record is here. The top one here, it does say unknown because it also doesn't know its own address. Okay. So we can go ahead and hit apply here. Okay, so now that that record is there, we're going to go ahead and hit on OK here, and we can see that our record is now here. We're going to go back over here to properties here in just a moment and continue that discussion as well. So we're going to go to properties here, but I wanted to just click that to let you know that that record did show up in the middle here. So we're going to go through each one of the tabs here and explain what's going on. So we can see here that the zone is currently running. We could pause it if we needed to take it offline for maintenance or anything. We can see here it's an Active Directory integrated zone, and we could change that to a secondary zone or sub zone. Come down here, we can actually see that the replication type here, and this is what we selected earlier as far as what we're going to replicate to if we wanted to change that. We can come down here and we can see that it says secure only, and this is going to be for the dynamic updates. And these are going to be authenticated updates, and so they have to come from somewhere that's been authenticated, whether from the computer itself or whether from DHCP. So something has authenticated, or we can change this to a non-secure, which we wouldn't want to do. So, and the servers that will be responsible for updating these records will be the ones that are on the name server tab. So we're going to go to our start of authority, and you can see here that this is the new zone, and the serial number is 1. This serial number will get incremented automatically when records are added. That tells the other DNS servers that, hey, there's a change here because this number has been incremented. And if we come down here, we can see the primary server is going to be this one here, and this is going to be the primary server for the zone for the server that we currently own. So this has no bearings of like, hey, this is the actual server that owns this zone. This is just the one that we're currently on. Same thing goes here for the host master. It's going to be for the server that we currently own in this domain. Okay, and so you're not going to go in here and change this at all. It's going to just be for the domain, and again, this is going to be for the server that you're currently on. The other items here talk about the refresh interval for the zone, the retry interval for the zone in case it actually fails to replicate, expiration, and how long will it be before this zone actually expires. And it's going to be after 1 day. Normally you'd have some serious problems going on. But by that time, folks will be complaining and saying they can't get to things. So you already know something's going on here. So normally you won't have to get to this 1 day mark here. And same thing goes for your TTL. And this is, again, how long the records will stay here within this particular zone and stay active until they go away. Okay, and again, you'll get things within DNS, or people will start complaining if you are having problems with this particular thing here. Normally not something you're gonna ever have to worry about here. And again, this TTL here is gonna match with this item down here at the bottom here. And you'll see as we go through, the actual A records are gonna have TTLs on them as well. I'm going to click on the name server tab here. These are going to be the name servers that actually have records that are authenticated that we've added in here for this particular zone. And if we go over to, as we go through, we're going to look at our zone transfer, and that's going to map back to here. So we click on security. It's going to be the users within Active Directory who have access to do anything with these zones here. Okay. So we're going to go to zone transfer. And so you can see here, the zone currently is not secure. So what we'd want to do is we actually want to come in here and select the check mark here and see currently it defaults to any name server, which is not what you want. You always want it to go to only the servers on the name server tab, or you specify the servers here. The reason being is that if this is selected here to any server, and this happened to be cvs.com, what would happen is that your internal records can be transferred over to cvs.com out on the internet. And so that happens a lot. It's a well-known hack that happens. And so what most administrators will do is they will not allow zones like these to be routable. And so we'll just do a .local, or if we do a .com, we'll stop it at the firewall. That's normally what happens. But to prevent those things from happening here, you actually want to go ahead and say only to the name servers here. Okay, and the notification tab here, down here at the bottom where it says notify, when you click on this one, this is actually needs to default to this one here, and this should be where you always want to set it to. It's going to notify these name servers that you're going offline is what this particular tab here is for. So inside of your network adapter, when we go into Open Network Adapter and Sharing Center and go here to IPv4, you can see here there are 2 DNS servers listed here. The primary server is going to be the one that we're currently on. This could be for any server. It would be for the backup server as well, which would be AD02. It's going to notify AD02. If I go to restart this server, the notification tab will tell this server, hey, I'm going down, take over. Okay, and so that's where that tab comes into play. So a lot of people wonder why they have to supply 2 DNS servers. Well, that's the reason why. It's for this tab here, for the notification. It's not there by default. WINS, of course, is from NT4, and it's not something that we even use anymore in the environments because DNS has come so far along. So we don't talk about WINS anymore or LTM files at all. So we'll just skip that one for now. We'll go ahead and say okay here. All right, so now we're going to come over here to one of the records, and we're going to just take a look at one of them and go to properties on one. And actually, not there. I actually wanted to go over here back to our default one. And we want to talk about these A records here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go into one of the records, double click it. Once you go into the record, you can see here now we have a TTL down here at the bottom. We can see here it's set for 20 minutes. What will happen with this TTL is that the server is, DNS requires for the server or computer or printer, what have you, it has to still check in every it's an interval that they have to check in, and it's going to be midway through this TTL. So this is set for 20 minutes. At the 10-minute mark, this server is required to check in and say, hey, I'm still using this record. Otherwise, this record will get deleted. And you can see here, here's the check mark here. And so there's going to be a cleanup that will actually happen, and this record will get deleted if this server does not check back in. Okay, and the security is the same thing like we said before, who can actually manipulate these particular records here. And so, as I said before, here's our fully qualified domain name. So if you ever hear someone say FQDN, they're talking about the server name here, or object name dot the domain name. That's the fully qualified domain name. And that's going to map to the IP address. And this is what we call a glue record. Okay. So if you ever hear that term, that's what people are going to be referring to. So we're going to then right click here in the white space, so we can right click over here on the actual zone itself. And you can see here we have different record types. A record is just what we just talked about, a glue record. A CNAME is going to be a common name. So think of this as a nickname. So if you're from the South or any place like that, what will happen is that people will have nicknames. So this might be called John, and John will be an alias for Test Lab 03. So what'll happen is that what they'll have to do is they'll just say, hey, John, I need to access this resource. So / or UNC path or map drive to John, but John maps to Test Lab 3. And that can get confusing, but a CNAME does come in helpful, especially when you have multiple people that come from a different environment that's used to accessing something by a certain name, but it needs to map to somewhere. But you as an administrator don't want to have to go and build that. You can just give them a CNAME and say, hey, map to this name, and it's going to hit this resource. Really cuts down on a lot of the politics and things of that nature, but it does have other uses, especially when it comes to SQL and it comes to failover cluster. That's where that CNAME is going to come in play. The MX record is going to be your mail exchange record, and this is going to have to do with your exchange records out on the web, and from there you will end up supplying a I guess I would say it's actually going to be your mail exchange record is going to end up having a different priority with it. Most of the time it'll have a priority of 10, and if you need a lower priority, most people will have multiple DNS server or spam filters sitting on the edge, so they want to do what we call a round robin. So what will happen is that they might want to have one that actually works as a primary and one as a backup. And so when you create I'll go ahead and click this here, but when you create a MX record, here's your priority here. And so with this priority, this will tell the internet out here when they actually get your SMTP record, and most of the time that's what they'll be. All right, and so this SMTP record, whenever people go to query your domain, it'll tell them to go to this server first. All right, and so then the mail will come into there and get delivered to the end users. All right, and so this SMTP here will map to a fully qualified domain name. So again, it's kind of just a glue record, just a pointer, kind of pointing this to here. So this will point to something like a Test Lab 3. And so when you're creating this and someone, your exchange administrator has created a new exchange server, they're going to need a MX record to go with it. So then you'll add that server to Active Directory. You'll go out to your environment. You're going to browse to it. So in this case here, let's say it was Test Lab 3. So this SMTP.testlab1.local would map to this Test Lab 3 is where it would map to. Okay, go ahead and hit cancel here. All right, there are going to be, you can create a new domain here. You can create a new delegation. Your delegation is going to be for records that will show up underneath here, and they're going to be for delegates to other servers. All right, and so other new records. And so if you select this is going to be for creating your TXT records. These are going to be for your CNAME records. You can create your TXT records down here at the bottom, and these are going to be for like your SFP records for DNS out on the web, your SRVs, any of those types of records. You can create those from within here. And so you won't see them there. So if an administrator or someone comes to you and say, hey, we need to create this record internally, you'll have to do that for an other record. Okay. All right, so we're going to go back over here. We're going to right click again and go to properties again here. And I just wanted to just make sure that you don't confuse these again when you're right clicking on these particular records, that you're going to have, one is to right click on your actual zone itself. And then for your server itself, your server has its own records inside of DNS as well. So when you right click on it, you have quite a few options here as well. So again, you can configure another DNS server. So if you wanted to connect to another server and configure it from one central location, you can do it from here. You could just select this option here. It'll go out, and from here, you can go ahead and configure another DNS server. Okay. All right. So if you need to create another default application directory, you can do that as well. This is going to be putting it on a different partition. So that'll be mainly for backup. So if you needed to move it or anything like that, create a new zone just like we did before. All right. And then here you come down to your set your scavenging time here. So we can come here, and this is going to be you know that check mark that I mentioned earlier that said about the record will be deleted. All right, and so this is where this will come into play. So in 7 days, it'll come through here and delete those records that actually have a check mark in, and that's what this is talking about here. Okay, and so you would select this here, and you would select OK, and then from here you can select OK again. All right, and so then now that is actually set. So now if you come down here and you say, you know what, I don't want to wait on this, you can go ahead and select this option right now, and it's going to go ahead and get rid of those stale records. So if you come here and you have something that's been sitting out there and they've been out there for, I don't know, 120 days, you can come into here and say, yes, I want to go ahead and clean these up right now. And you can say yes here. And so if anything was set to be deleted from here, it would be gone at that point. Okay. All right, we can come down here to properties here, and you can clear your cache from here. You can also clear your cache lookups from here, but we're going to talk about cache lookups, so I don't want to clear that right now. You can also update your server data file. This is actually the data file that's like a database. So there's no need to update that. It's going to update automatically. And then launching NS lookup. This is going to be your name server lookup. You're going to do that from command prompt. And we can go ahead and select it here. And it's going to be NS lookup is the way that this will work. And this is kind of putting the cart before the horse here. I actually wanted to explain why we actually have a unknown here. And we'll actually correct this here in just a moment as we go through, and we're still talking about the zone. So we're going to cancel out of here, and we'll come back to that here in just a moment. So we're going to right click here again here and go down to properties of this server. And talk through the different tabs here. So on the interface here, this is going to be the interface that's going to be listening and taking traffic for DNS. So by default, it will try to come in here and select them all. So if you have a multi-home server with 2 NICs, it'll try and do it from here. Then you have your forwarder. Your forwarder is going to be the server that you want to forward traffic to that you don't know anything about. So if you don't have a forwarder here, what will happen is that it will utilize the root hint servers, and these are going to be the servers that actually run the actual internet itself. So what will happen is that if your end users, they go and look up google.com, when they go to search for google.com, it will then say, hey, do I have a zone for google.com? I don't know about that. Let me send that to a forwarder. Sends it out to the forwarder. The forwarder will say, yep, I have a record for that, and then life is good. So then if the send out to the forwarder and the forwarder doesn't have an acknowledgement of google.com, it will then send it over here to the root hint. When it goes over here to the root hints, it will then go out to check and say, hey, do you have anything for google.com? If it does, it'll return that back to the server. The server will then return that back to your end user. Your end user will then connect out to google.com. This all happens in a fraction of seconds, but I did want to explain here what's actually going on with the how DNS actually works. So that's what that forwarder is used for here, okay? And you can see the check mark that is checked here for the root hints that I just described here. Okay, so on this next tab, on the advanced tab, disable recursion. And so if you disable this means that you have an environment that you don't want your servers going out to the internet to look up. You as an administrator has dictated that I know every site or domain that my end users are going to look up. So if someone from a C-level said, hey, I only want our people to be able to go out to CVS.com, go out to Walgreens.com, and go out to the FarmersDrugCenter.com, and those are the only 3 places I want them to be able to go, not search the internet or anything, then you would actually select this item here. This will disable your forwarder and forces it to actually use its zones here, is what'll happen here. Okay, and enable bind. This is going to be working with your Unix and Linux DNS server. They're going to be bind DNS server, and that's what this check mark here is for. And right here for fail on load, this is also going to be like if this zone is having problems, it will not load in here. So if you restarted the server and this was having a problem, if you had this item selected, the zone would fail to load. You normally don't want to have this selected, which is why Microsoft unchecks it by default, because you'd want to be able to come into here and actually fix the problem that's going on. All right, enable round robin is going to be the 2 servers that you actually have in place right now. So that means a round robin, so it can go to one or the other server whenever it's trying to do a lookup. Doesn't always have to overwhelm this one server. All right, and name masking order, that you really don't have to worry about. It's gonna happen in the background, and you won't actually see this. So you don't actually have to see the appendant, the suffix being appended. All right, and then the secure cache, again, this is going to be checking for any type of pollution within the database of DNS itself. And so if it does, it'll actually clean it up for you as part of the scavenging, okay? And it's what that's going to be. All right, and then your last one here for your remote, again, not one that you have to worry about because you're not doing DNS security, okay? And we talked about the root hints already. I won't really go through that. You can come in here and edit these if you needed to. You normally don't want to touch these unless someone else has built another DNS server and you want it to be your root hint server and not these. But normally you want to keep these at the default, okay? Go to security. This is going to be who's responsible, who has access to actually manipulate these records. Monitoring tab. This is going to be where we come in here to actually test to make sure that the DNS server is actually functioning correctly. So we can come into here and we can force it to test the server now, and it's going to supply a simple query for it to do a lookup. Same thing for recursion. If we come in here and we do one for recursion and it's working, then what will happen is it will try to look a record up that it specifies within itself. This is going to fail here and give us an error here, but I will do it just to show you that if a server doesn't have access to get out to the web, like mine doesn't, it's actually going to fail just in just a moment here. And you can have it perform these things automatically as well. So if you wanted it to perform that, you can see here in the background, we just got our error message that I talked about because it couldn't do a lookup for what the record was that it specified for it to look up. So again, you can set it to do this every minute, every 1 hour, whatever you want to, just to make sure that your DNS server is running in tip-top shape. So you can see here it failed as well. Our DNS event logs here, you want to keep that to all because anything that happens, whether it's informational, a warning, or an error, you want that to actually go into your event log viewer, which is going to be right here. And it's going to be also off the server manager, so you can get to it from there. And then doing a debug. So if you are experiencing problems with lookups, like slow lookups, things of that nature, you can come in here and select these, apply, and then you can start doing a DNS debug. Come back, look at your log. You're going to specify it here. It doesn't give you a place to browse. So you would specify like C, Windows, temp, like that directory, and then put in the file name like dnsdebug.txt or dnsdebug.log. And then from there, this will actually build that file for you. Okay, so from here, we can go ahead and hit cancel. We're not going to worry about our error message here because we knew we were going to get that. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this and come down to our reverse lookup zone. Remember earlier I was talking about the reason why we got a error message for our NS lookup. That's because we don't have a reverse lookup zone. And so our reverse lookup zone is going to be mapping the IP address back to the actual glue record, the name record itself. So for here, we'd have to right click and go ahead and create a new zone. So we're going to say new zone. Next, and by default, this doesn't get created. And because this is going to be an AD zone, because we need it for the domain itself, this is going to be a primary zone, and it's going to be an AD integrated zone. We're going to select next, and again, we're going to replicate it to the domain controllers within the environment. It's going to be for IPv4. We're not doing any IPv6 at the moment. So for here, we're going to specify the suffix of that. So we're going to do. All right, and this is going to be the first 3 octets of the network portion. So you'll specify that. You can see here it doesn't give you a way to specify the last. It's going to append that to it, which is going to map back to the actual server name. So it'll be this IP address here dot whatever the IP address is of the last octet of that server. So we're going to say next here, and again it's going to be secure, and we're going to say finish. So now, if we go down here to our reverse lookup zone, you can see there are no records here. Again, we have to go in and put in our additional server with this in order for this to be replicated. So we're going to go ahead and select properties here, go over to our name servers tab, and we're going to say add. And now we're going to go ahead and add in the other server. All right, so now we supplied the fully qualified domain name. We're going to go ahead and hit resolve here. And you can see here, it's going to say that it doesn't recognize it. And again, this is because we've just created this and that record doesn't exist. So we're going to go ahead and say apply and say okay. So you can see the record is here now. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back up to our forward lookup zone and correct that. Go back up here to our first thing here. And again, this has to be done from the start. Otherwise, you won't receive errors like that. And you're going to go to the actual record here, and you can say update the pointer record and say OK. Again, go right here, uncheck this one because we know that that record's not there. Say apply and say OK. Same thing for this one here. Say apply and OK. So now we're going to go back down here to our pointer record. We're going to refresh this record. We can either right click or we can click on the refresh up here at the top. And now you can see all 3 of my records are now here. Okay. And so you can see one is static and the other one here is still dynamic. All right. And so now if we were to go back here on this particular zone, go to properties, go back to our name servers tab, and we're going to go to edit. You can see now this is green. The reason why is because now it knows that this record is tied to this IP address, okay? And so now it says that that's okay. So I know that was a long process to actually get there, but this is super important because if this is not created in advance, you'll have to go through your forward lookup zone, click on each one of these records and select, deselect, and then select this record over and over like that, going through each one. Let's say you have 200 of these, you'd have to do that to get them all into this this reverse lookup zone here. So I did want to go through that and actually tell you what that was. Okay, so we're going to go down here to our trust points. All right, so these trust points here, we can come down here and we can say add. All right, and these are going to be for creating a certificate to go along with this with DNS for security. So for here, you'll come in here and create a fully qualified domain name for out on the web. And then you'll go out to SSL Labs or somewhere like that and have you a public key and a private key generated and supply what your protocol is going to be and what your authentication strength is going to be, your algorithm. And from here, put your private key in here and then give someone else your public key. And that's all you have to do here. And this is going to be for security. And you'll actually see if you're using that when you select the zone up here at the top. You'll actually see it in the actual records themselves when you come up to, I have to refresh this here. I had to close out of here and come back in to actually show you that. Okay, now that we've closed out and come back into DNS to the management console, we can see here what I was referring to here at the top. You can see here we're not using any security here or keymaster, nothing there. It says not signed. Okay, so that would be for the trust points. All right, and then conditional forwarder. This conditional forwarder is going to be for forwarding to a domain that that you might have connections with. So, for an example, if we come here and we say new conditional forwarder, you would type in the fully qualified domain name here, the DNS server that you want to forward off to, and this would be for a server that you have no acknowledgement of. So this will be for like the DNS or domains that you have no acknowledgement of the records that are in there. So if this happened to be trueliant.com, like a credit union, and you had a connection with them, you don't have access to the records, but you have a trust relationship with them inside of Active Directory through sites and services. But, sorry, not through sites and services, domains and trust. Through domains and trust, you have a connection with them, but you don't have their DNS servers over here. So in order to resolve records over there, you would have to type in the DNS name here, the fully qualified domain name here, then supply the IP address of their DNS server, and then whenever someone needs to look something up on your network for that domain, it'll forward off to this domain controller here, or this DNS server here, okay? So that's what that's for. And then your global logs, again, this is going to be your DNS logs. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this video for the DNS. Oh, and I did want to go through and I said it brings us to the end, but I actually wanted to show you one thing here. So we right-clicked on here earlier and we launched NS Lookup. You can see now that this is working. This is because of the reverse lookup is here now. So as you saw in the previous part of the video, this actually said unknown. All right, and so if we needed to look up any other records within here, you would just type the name of the server here or the object here. So if it was a printer, you could type the name of the printer here or name of the server that's actually in DNS. So you can see there, I didn't specify the fully qualified domain name when I typed it in here. It appended the suffix to it for me. So you can see it resolved the record here. Okay, so that's how NS Lookup works. You can specify other servers from within here. If you wanted to do troubleshooting, you could just type the name server. And if it's on your network, you can supply the name here, or if you know the IP address of a server out on the web you want to actually use to check on DNS propagation, you can type the IP address here, and then it'll go out and select that server and let you do queries against it. So if you have another server within your environment that you want to connect to, you know the IP address, or you know the name, well, we'll connect over to that one. All right, and so you can see now I've connected over to lab AD02. All right, and this doesn't change what's underneath your network adapter down here. It doesn't change that at all. This is just for querying to actually check the other server for records. And you can select your up arrow here and hit that again, and we can check and we can see that lab AD02 also knows about this particular record here. So we know that DNS is working through and through right now. And this is, again, command lines that you want to get yourself, that you want to familiarize yourself with, just to make sure that you know your environment's working. Okay, so at this point, we have a fully fledged working DNS environment, and we are ready to start taking traffic. This point, this environment is pretty much done. We can start adding servers, computers, printers, all of those things, and they'll be accessible and being able to be looked up within our environment. Okay, and I hope this video has been helpful and enjoyable. Leave me any comments. I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for watching.